There is a phrase that I come back to again and again in my work, and that is, you are the expert on being you. It's not your human design chart, it's not your coach, not a system, not a personality test, not a teacher with a better branding strategy than you. It's you. You are the expert on being you. And I think that matters, especially in a world where people are constantly being handed new language for themselves, whether it's astrology, Enneagram, human design, Myers-Briggs, strength, trauma frameworks, IFS, attachment styles, nervous system work, shadow work. All of these maps can be really useful. I would not have the life I have today without them. Some of them can feel eerily accurate. Human design blew my mind. Some of them can give a language for the things that we've just felt our whole life but never been able to articulate or have words for. But the map is not the territory. These maps of ourselves are not us. The map is a way of paying attention. It gives us points to look at and to explore. So when I talk about human design, I do not talk about it as if it were a religion. I don't talk about it as if it were a box to put in to be pigeonholed. I don't talk about it as a script that you're supposed to obey. Instead, I talk about it like a mirror, a strange, layered, symbolic, sometimes esoteric, deeply clarifying mirror. And the way I work with it is what I call human design assisted life coaching. The word assisted here is important because human design is not the authority in the room. You are. You're the expert on being you. You've been you your whole life. The chart is not there to replace your discernment. It is where we go to provoke discernment, to help you notice where you have been overriding yourself, where you have been performing a version of yourself that was built for survival, approval, belonging, safety, not for full expression. Because most people are not suffering because they have no idea of who they are, right? Think of all the coaches saying, I'll tell you who you are, I'll tell you who you are. That might not solve the problem. Most people are suffering because somewhere along the way, they learned it was not safe, not useful, not allowed, not convenient to be who they were. And so we try to be someone else. We adapt. And along the way, maybe we become easier to love, easier to approve of, easier to understand, easier to manage, easier to easier to praise, easier to control. And then, after all of that, faking it, surviving, years later, that adaptation, those things that we changed about ourselves, they start to become our personality. We don't really know who we'd be without them. Human design gives us a language for looking at exactly that. Conditioning, programming. Where did we self-abandon for our own protection and safety? And we don't do that with judgment. We don't do that with shame. We don't do that with this frantic need to fix everything, but instead with curiosity. What is actually yours? What did you inherit? What did you learn to become? What did you abandon to become that? What did you start doing because it worked once, even if it is now quietly working against you and costing you your dreams, your time, blood, sweat, tears? That, to me, is where the work begins. Because human design has a lot of moving parts, and it can get overwhelming very quickly. But there are types, strategies, authorities, profiles, centers, gates, channels, incarnation crosses, variables, arrows, digestion, environment, and on and on and on. And I think this is where a lot of people get lost. They get stuck in just learning all the names and the parts and the functions of these things, and they don't apply it. They learn the system, but they don't necessarily use it to change their lives, and it's easy to do that. Right? Some folks keep collecting information about themselves, but they don't actually do anything with it. I was stuck in that for a long time. And this is why my approach is action over analysis, right? Taking the insights that we've gathered, not just from human design, but from all the work, the trauma, the shadow work, the inner child work, and we apply it. It's not applying action without depth, not shallow productivity, not forcing yourself through life while calling it empowerment or liberation or freedom. I mean action as integration. At some point, insight has to become behavior. Otherwise, it's just information, not even insight. Definitely not wisdom. It's just information. At some point, I'm learning about myself has to become I am choosing differently. The question that I would ask and that I have asked is, well, what does choosing differently look like? What does my chart mean? The better question, what would life look like if I stopped betraying what I already know? If I stopped people-pleasing, self-abandoning, if I actually held the boundaries, if I had a framework for consistently telling me, okay, after I do that step, what's the next step and the next step? That's the coaching part. Human design can show us the patterns, but coaching asks, what are you going to do with all that awareness on a Tuesday afternoon when the old version of you wants to take over? Let's talk about the basic moving parts. The first piece is your type. And like in astrology, we've got the 12 signs of the zodiac from Pisces to Aries. Your type gives a broad kind of sense of how your energy is designed to interact with life, existence itself. We've got manifestors, generators, manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors. These are the 5 types. They're not hierarchies. One isn't better than the other. One isn't more spiritual and the other more salt of the earth. One is not more successful. They're different energetic orientations. They're different ways of being in the world. Some people are here to initiate. Some people are here to respond. That's me. Some people are here to guide. Some people are here to reflect back the state of the collective. Some need recognition. Some need freedom from constant interference. Some need guidance. They need interference, disruption. But again, this is not meant to become just another identity, another costume that we wear. The point is not to walk around saying, well, I'm a generator, so I can do this or I can't do that, or I'm a projector, so everyone needs to invite me, or I'm a manifesting generator, so I'm just naturally chaotic. They're not excuses. There might be reasons why we have these tendencies, but they're not to be used as excuses, because that's not what liberation is. That's just using a new system to avoid the responsibility of what true freedom actually entails, right? To know ourselves. So for me, the better question is, where have I been fighting the true way that my energy naturally works? Where am I trying to live like everyone else or like someone else? Where am I forcing myself into rhythms, relationships, work, or experiences that are technically possible but deeply, deeply expensive? Expensive in the sense of having to sacrifice who we are to be able to play that game in that way. So the first piece is our type. The second is our strategy and authority. Strategy is generally described as how your type best interacts with life. Not just other people, but life, the experience of being here. And authority is how we make aligned decisions. And this is one of the most practical parts of the system, right? How do we make decisions? Almost no one, some would say no one, is made to make decisions with their mind, because most people are not making decisions from their actual knowing. If we're not supposed to make it from our mind, where do we do it? Type, strategy, and authority give us that insight. So human design asks us to slow that down a little bit so that we can actually hear our lives speaking through us and to us, as us, for us. And not every decision needs to be figured out mentally. Some would say no decisions need to be figured out mentally. But the body has its own wisdom center, and human design connects us to that wisdom center. For some people, the clarity comes over time through waiting, basically, for emotional clarity. Other people, speaking things out loud really reveals their truth. They need to hear their own voice. For some people, emotional waves need space to crest and to crash before a decision comes clear. And this is where the system gets very real, because it's one thing to say, trust yourself. It's another thing to really understand the specific way that trust actually speaks into your life or our lives. Does your clarity come as a gut response, for example? Does it come after an emotional pattern has come, raged, and then passed? Does it come through the sound of your own voice, hearing your voice through your own ears? Does it come through the environment that you're in? How does the environment affect or interact with your thinking, your reflecting, your realizations, your processing? Does it come when you stop asking your mind to solve what your body is already aware of? This is not about becoming mystical in a vague way. It's about becoming honest in a practical way. And that starts with becoming honest with ourselves, because our lives are shaped by decisions. I heard another coach once say, life is just a series of choices that we make. And if we're better equipped to make those choices in a way that will give us a higher percentage or ratio of positive outcomes, why would anyone turn away from that kind of map, that kind of guidance? So human design assisted life coaching is not about handing your life over to a chart or to another person. It's about using the chart as a mirror, as a guide, as a map, using coaching as the structure, and using the action as the proof. So putting together the insight with the strategy. Because in the end, the goal is not to become more obsessed with yourself. The goal is to become more available to yourself, to your truth. Less tangled in perfectionism, less tangled in performance, less addicted to explaining ourselves, less loyal to an old way of being, old conditioning, less afraid of our own shape as it takes form before our very eyes. We have a front row seat to our transformation, and more willingness to live as the person who you already are. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's just about doing it honestly. And that's where I've noticed the real change happens.